Hello everyone, this is part 2 of how to make a Pac-Man game in Scratch. In this tutorial, I'll be creating our player and make a smooth tile-based movement system. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, check it out, link is in the description below. Anyways, let's get started. So in the last video, we created our tile-based map generator, and now we're going to create our player. So I'm going to first go over here and choose a sprite. Alright. And for this one, since I don't want to get copyrighted, I'm not going to create a Pac-Man image, but instead I'll just use this cat sprite. And inside of costumes, I'll delete cat B. And for our player, I'll just make it simply a cat head. So I'm going to select this and remove the body. All right, and I'll also remove the whiskers. So I'm going to have to first ungroup this and then delete the whiskers. Okay, and now we have our player, so I'm going to center this, like so, and of course I'll make it much smaller, maybe, I think about this big is fine. I'm going to move it around on the stage to see if it works. Okay, maybe a bit smaller, and to make it stand out more, I'm going to copy this outline right here, so Control-C, Control-V. And then I'm going to increase the outline size and I'll make it a yellow color. All right. So something like this. And I'll put it in the center and make it go backwards just to have that glow effect on the map. All right, now I have my Pac-Man image and this is how it looks like on the map. So now I'm going to right click and duplicate this image. And for the second costume, I'm going to just simply flip this so that we have a right-facing one and a left-facing one. All right, so now we want to make it so that we can edit the map list to spawn the player anywhere we want on the map. So to do so, let's go inside of the map sprite and inside of the code. And let's make it so that if we type a P anywhere inside of this map list, then a player will spawn at that position. So for example, if I type a P right here, then I want the player to spawn right here. So I'm going to keep the P over here. And then inside of this generate level block, I'm going to grab an if else. So go to Control, grab an if else. And I'm going to copy this code right here. So duplicate and put this inside of the if and check if letter map X of item map Y of map equal to P, then spawn the player. So I'm going to drag this right after the change map X by 1 and move everything outside of the if else. And inside of the else, I'm going to drag this if else. So this was the code checking for the wall. And after this if else, I'm going to drag the stamp block and also the go to XY block before the stamp. And make sure that this is still inside of this repeat map with loop. All right, so now I'm going to go to variables and create two new variables for the player X and player Y, similar to how I created these two variables for the map X and map Y. So I'm going to create a variable and call this something like player X, and then click OK. And also create one called player Y and click OK. All right, so inside of this if, of course, once we reach the letter P, then let's set the player X to map X, and let's set player Y to actually not map Y, but something else. And I'll explain that later. But for now, let's first go to operators, grab a minus, and then go to variables, go to lists, and grab a length of map, drag it on the left side, and do minus map Y, and go to operators, grab a plus, drag this on the left side and +1, and drag this all inside of set player Y. So the reason why I'm doing this is because the map Y variable actually increases as the blocks are being generated downwards. So that means that the first row right here is map Y equal to 1, while the last row over here has map Y equal to 23. Which is the length of our list. However, it would make more sense to have our player Y start at 1 at the bottom here and then make it 23 at the very top. So that's why I'm sort of inverting the map y variable into the player y. So yeah, alright, now I'm just going to hide my map y variable, and alright. So now I'm going to go inside of looks and grab a switch costume to, and to switch costume to the blank after the set player x and player y. And now to actually tell the player to spawn, I'm going to go to events and grab a broadcast message block, drag this right before the switch costume to block, and I'll broadcast a new message and call it something like initialize player. So initialize player, and then click OK. Alright, so that's pretty much it inside of the map sprite. And now we can go inside of our cat, and let's drag a when and receive initialize player. Then first off, I'm going to point in direction 90 and switch costume to the right facing cat, so that's cat A. Alright, and now let's go to motion and grab a go to XY block. And this go to XY block is going to use our player X and player Y variables that we set in our map sprite. So inside of our cat and inside of the X, let's go to variables, grab the player X, go to operators, grab a multiplication operator, drag player X on the left side, and times 15, which is our tile size. And actually, I'm going to go to variables and create a new variable and call this something like tile size, because we will be using the tile size variable a lot. So click OK. And inside of our map, I am just going to simply, under the flag, I'm going to set tile size to 15 or whatever size you had. And I am going to, inside of here, drag the tile size instead of times 15. And for the times -15, I'm going to go to operators, grab a multiplication operator, and then on the right side, type in -1, and grab the tile size variable, and drag all of this instead of the -15. All right, and let's see if there's anywhere else that needs the tile size variable. I think that is fine. So let's go back to our cat sprite. And for our player X, let's multiply it by tile size instead of 15. And then lastly, let's go to operators, grab a plus, and go to variables and grab a map X offset or map offset X, and drag this on the right side, and drag this multiplication on the left side, and drag all of this inside of the go to X. All right, and now for the Y position, we can just right click duplicate it, and instead of player X, let's do player Y. And instead of plus map offset X, we can just do minus map offset X. All right, and then drag this inside of the Y, and now we should be fine for the player spawning. So if we try it out, then, oh yeah, oops, I meant to do map offset Y, so let me change that. And now, as you can see, our cat spawns over here. So earlier in our map, we made it so that the player is over here, and on our actual game screen, the cat actually went to this position. All right, so let's try something else. So I'm gonna try over here, and if we try it out, then our cat spawns over here. Nice. So for now, I'm gonna make it spawn directly in the center. So that should be right here. And let's try it out. Okay, so one more down. So that's right here. And all right, cool. So this is the starting position of our player. And now let's make it move. So first off, like actual Pac-Man, I want to make it so that if I tap a key, then the cat will always move in that direction until it touches a wall or until I press a different key. So that means that I don't have to hold a key to make the cat move. So to do that, I'm going to go to variables and create two new variables. I'll call this move X. And for this, I'm actually going to set it for this sprite only. And by the way, this doesn't really make a difference because the player is not creating any clones, but it makes it more organized. So I'll make this move X and call this one move Y, and also set it for the sprite only. All right. And under the initialize player, I'll set move X to 0, and also move y to 0. And then I'm going to create another variable, call it something like player direction, and also make it for the sprite only. Click OK. And I'll set player direction to, let's say, none. All right. And lastly, I'll create a variable called like move speed, and then make it for the sprite only. Click OK. And I'll set move speed. This is going to be the player move speed, and set it to, let's just try 3 for now. And all right. So now I'm going to go inside of control and grab a forever loop, and I'll go to my blocks, create a new block. And for this one, I'll call it something like check keys. Check keys, and then click OK. And this will obviously check which keys I'm currently pressing down. So inside of this block, I'm going to go to control, grab an if, and check if the key up arrow is pressed. So up arrow. Then I'm going to go to variables and set the player direction variable to up. All right, and now for the rest, I will right click, duplicate, and check if down arrow key pressed, then set it to down. And if left arrow key pressed or right arrow key, then set it to right. And lastly, if left arrow key pressed, then set it to left. All right, and inside of this forever loop, I'm going to drag the check keys block. Okay, now that we have checked which keys to press, now we want to prepare our player to move. So to do that, let's create a new block, and I'll call this prepare movement, and then click OK. And under this prepare movement block, I'm going to go to control and grab an if, and check if the player direction is equal to, let's say, up first. So if up, then let's grab an and we also want to check if the tile above the player is not a wall, then of course the player can move. So to do that, we have to grab a equals to operator and grab a letter 1 of apple block and put the player x inside of the 1. And then inside of here, we actually can't use player y, and that's because, remember, inside of our map, we created the player y to be equal to this. So we actually have to use this code right here inside of the cat sprite. So let's drag this inside of the cat, and the code should copy over. All right. And remember, the player y and map y are mirrored. So like if the map y was right here, then the player y would actually be over here. So we actually have to first convert the player y into the map y to check for the tile above the player. So let's actually go to variables and then create a new variable, and I'll call this something like player y inverted. All right, and then select for the sprite only and click OK. And I'm going to set, before this if, I'm going to set player y inverted to this. All right. And now inside of this apple, we can just simply go to item 1 of map. And inside of the 1, let's just drag the player y inverted and then go to operators -1, because keep in mind that the map y increases as the blocks go down. So we want to check the tile above, which is -1. And then we can drag this inside of the item 1 and drag all of this inside of the apple. And then lastly, we can drag this on the left side. And of course, we want to check if it's equal to a wall. Then we just type a plus. All right. And lastly, we want to put all of this inside of a not, because we want to check if the player above is not a wall. Then we can set move y to 1, which means that the player is going to move up. And also, we want to set move x to 0, because we don't want the player to move left or right anymore. All right, so now let's do the same for down, right, and left. So right-click duplicate and check if the player direction is equal to down, and not player y inverted plus 1 equal to wall, then do all of this. So instead of setting move y to 1, let's set it to -1. And then now let's do the same thing for if player direction equal to right. All right. And instead of player y inverted plus 1, we want to do player x plus 1. And lastly, let's do it for player direction equal to left. And let's do player x minus 1. All right. And also make sure to set move x to 1 if the player direction is equal to right, and set move y to 0. And for left, make sure to do -1 and 0. All right. And now let's drag the prepare movement block inside of the forever loop after the check keys, and we should be fine. So now we want the player to actually move now based off of these move x and move y variables that we have set. So to do so, I'm going to go to events and drag another when I receive initialize player. Then forever, I'm going to create a new block, and let's call this something like move left right, and then click OK. And also move up down. All right. And oh yeah, I actually want to edit these and add a number input. So this one, and I'm going to call this something like direction, or just dir for short, and then click OK. All right. And I'll do the same for the move up down block. So add a number input and type in dir. All right. And I'm going to drag this move left right block inside of the forever loop, and also the move up down block. And inside of this value, I'm going to put in the move x for the left right and move y for the up down. All right. So let's first edit the move left to right custom block. So inside of this, I'm going to first go to control, grab an if, and check, of course, if our direction is not equal to 0, which means that if the player is going to be moving left or right, then we want to do all of our code inside of this if. So first off, we want to change the player x variable, because if the player moves to the right, then of course we want to increase player x by 1. And the same thing for the left. So for this, I'm going to go to my blocks and create another new custom block, and I'll call this something like set player x. Okay, and then also add a number input. This is going to keep our direction, and then click OK. All right, so inside of this block, I'm going to first check if the direction is equal to 1, which means that the player is moving to the right. Then we want to set player x to, let's go to operators, grab a minus, go to motion, grab a x position, put it on the left, and go to variables, grab a map offset x, and then go to operators, grab a divided by, drag this on the left side, and go to variables, drag the tile size on the right. All right, and then lastly, go to operators, scroll down to absolute of, and then change this to ceiling of, and drag this on the right. So we're going to set the player x to this, but how this works is that right now, our player x is 10. However, the moment we press the right arrow key, then the player is going to set its player x to 11, because that's the tile that the player wants to move to. And that's the purpose of the ceiling block, which means that it converts any number to the next highest whole number. All right, and now for the left arrow key, we want to duplicate this, and instead of 1, of course, we do -1, and instead of ceiling, we want to do floor, which means that we get the next lowest whole number, and now that should be fine. So now inside of this move left right block, I'm going to drag the set player x block inside of the if, and drag this direction inside of the set player X. Alright, so now we have set the target tile that the player needs to move to. But now we want to check if the target tile is a blank or a wall. So to do so, we have to create a new variable, and I'll call this something like target tile, and I'll make it for the sprite only, and click OK. Alright, so inside of this if, I'm going to set target tile to, let's go to operators, and drag the letter 1 of apple block, drag it inside of target tile, and make this player X plus the direction, alright, of, let's go to variables, go to lists, and drag the item 1 of map block, and drag the player Y inverted of map. So this pretty much just gets the letter in this entire map list. So of course, after this, we want to check if it's not a wall. So if not target tile is equal to a wall, and wall is a plus sign, so plus, then of course we want to move the player to our target tile. So inside of this if not, let's go to control and drag a repeat until. Alright, and this part is going to be a bit long, but let's go to operators and drag a greater than operator, and inside of the left side, let's grab a multiplication operator, drag it in there, and go to motion, drag the X position block, and multiply it by direction. And on the right side, let's go to operators, grab a plus, go to variables, grab the player X variable, and add the direction, and then go to operators, grab the multiplication operator, and multiply everything by the tile size. And then after that, we want to go to operators and then add the stage X offset, or the map offset X. Alright, and then drag this on the left side. And lastly, we want to go to operators, grab a minus, drag this entire thing on the left side, and subtract the player move speed. So move speed times the direction. So drag direction again from the move left right block. And then drag another multiplication operator, and then drag the direction, drag it in there, and drag this entire thing on the left side, and then we can put this entire thing on the right side, like so. Alright, so pretty much what this huge block does is that, for example, if we press the right arrow key, then the player is going to keep moving to the right until its X position is greater than the player's tile on our map list plus our map offset X minus our move speed. So this pretty much just converts the player X value into an actual X position, like on the game screen. And this is to prevent any weird snapping back. And all of these multiply direction stuff is for if the player wants to also move to the left. So yeah, and now inside of this repeat, we can finally make the player actually move. So let's go to motion and drag a change X by block. And let's just change X by move speed times the value or direction. And let's drag this inside of the change X by. And then after this repeat until block, let's grab another set player X, and I'll drag the direction inside of here. And lastly, just to make sure that the player goes to the exact tile, let's go to motion and set X to the player X multiplied by the tile size, so variables, tile size, and plus the stage X offset, or map offset X, alright, and drag this inside of the set X2 block, which is after the set player X block. Alright, and now this should be it for the move left and right movement. So let's see. And I actually do want to change this block right here. So instead of minus map y, I actually want to minus the player y for the player y inverted. So make sure to change that. And now we should be fine. All right, so let's try it out. And if I click the right arrow key, then the player keeps moving until it touches the wall. All right, cool. So now we can move the player left and right, like so. However, it still seems like you can change the player's direction even though the player did not completely finish reaching the target tile. So to prevent that, I'm going to create a new variable and call this something like can change direction or can change dir. And then I'll select for the sprite only and then click OK. And right before the move left and right, I'll set can change direction to no. And right after, I'll set can change direction to yes. And then inside of this prepare movement block, I want to grab an if, drag it all around this, and check if can change direction is equal to yes. Then do all of this. All right, so let's try it again. And now the movement does seem a lot better because the player can only change directions once the player has reached their target tile. And yeah. All right, so now we want to add the movement for up and down. So to do that, it's pretty simple. We can just right-click duplicate the code for the move left-right block and put it inside of the move up and down. However, I think we do have to change these direction of variables right here. So I'm actually going to right-click and edit this. And I'm going to call this diry just to differentiate them from this direction right here. So I'll write these actually copied over, so we're fine. But I'm also going to edit this and call this dirx for the move left and right block. All right, just to not get them confused. And inside of the set player x block, I'm gonna right click edit and make it direction x value like this. Okay. And of course, for the move up and down block, we want another set player y block. So I'm going to create a new block and call this set player y, and then add a number input and call this dir y val, and then click OK. All right. And then inside of the set player y, we can simply right click duplicate. And instead of setting player x, let's set player y. And instead of x position, let's grab y positions. And then change map offset x to map offset y. And we should be fine for the set player y block. All right, and now inside of the move up and down block, we want to replace the set player x with set player y for direction y. All right. And for our target tiles, instead of adding direction y to player x, we want to actually subtract it from this player y inverted variable. So let's go to operators, grab a minus, drag player y inverted on the left, and drag direction y on the right, and drag everything inside of item 1. All right. And now this is fine. However, inside of this repeat until, we actually want to change the x position to y position times dir y, okay, and then repeat until it's greater than player y plus direction y times tile size plus map offset y minus move speed times direction y, okay, and then change y by move speed times direction y and set player y, and lastly set y to all of this. However, change player x to player y and change map offset x to map offset y. And also, instead of a plus, we want to minus. So put everything inside of here and drag this back inside of the set y2 block. So now we also should have up and down working. So let's try it out. If we press the up arrow key, then okay, the player does not seem to be stopping at that wall. So let's see. Oh yeah, and that's because actually we have to replace this plus with a minus, because remember our map is inverted compared to our player Y, so we have to minus everything. So let's drag this on the left and map offset Y on the right and drag all of this back, and let's try it again. And now, okay, so we're getting closer. However, the player seems to be snapping back a bit. Oh yeah, okay, so when we're setting the player Y, we want to actually add the map offset Y instead of subtracting it. So it's opposite to the X positions. So let's drag this inside of the plus, drag this back inside, and do the same thing for the other one. And instead of this direction X val, we want to drag the direction Y val inside of here. And let's try it out. And as you can see, the player now stops at the walls. All right, cool. So now the player can move left and right freely like so. And by the way, I am not holding down the arrow keys. I'm just tapping them once, and the player constantly moves like so. And also, I can pre-move by, for example, pressing the down arrow key right now, and then the player goes down when there is a space available. So yeah, this is really similar to the actual Pac-Man controls, and it seems to be working. So I'm going to switch to the backdrop just to make it a bit faster. Okay, like so. And again, I'm just tapping the keys. I'm not holding them down. And the movements are all tile based. So the player sort of moves until it reaches a tile, and then it does the next movement, like so. All right, cool. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe too if you haven't already. In the next video, I'll be creating our first enemies with enemy AI. By the way, this project is shared on my Scratch profile. Link is in the description below. Anyways, that's it for this video. See ya!